Good afternoon, Albuquerque. Ronnie, Lucero, the Lexit ambassador from the Lexit movement, and I'd like to welcome you guys to a very special edition. Today we have George Papadopolous, the 2016 foreign policy advisor for the Trump administration, the Trump campaign. George, thank you for your time and welcome to Lexit Live. How are you doing today?
Thanks a lot for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Good deal. Listen, we're going to kind of make this brief. A lot of people know about what happened to you, and a lot of people don't. Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience working for the Trump campaign in 2016 and how you were involved with this campaign?
Sure. So I started off my career in D.C. I worked in politics in conservative circles for 5 years, leading up to working on presidential campaign politics. I actually first started advising the Ben Carson campaign. And then after he dropped out, then I joined the Trump campaign. And there was something that I noticed right off the bat as an advisor working for rival Republican campaigns during a time when clearly Clinton was supposed to be fulfilling Obama's third term. And that's that the Obama administration was meddling in many campaigns. They were sending emissaries to the Carson campaign from the State Department to really try and find out who the advisors were, what the policy platforms were all about, and to find out if the candidate was a threat or not. And the world essentially collapsed on my lap once I joined the Trump campaign because he was clearly viewed as the biggest threat out there.
Absolutely. And, I just kind of want to move into what happened with you. I know the FBI sent in a investigator posed as an assistant to meet with you. I think her name was Azra Turk. Can you tell us a little bit about your interactions with Azra Turk?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting person that really hasn't been scrutinized. And why and what I predict is going to come out about this person is that it wasn't just the FBI that was spying on the campaign, but the CIA was also involved. Now, if you looked at that article from the New York Times about Azra Turk, it says that she was some sort of government investigator. She was not an FBI agent. Now, why on earth would this government person be involved in a spying operation against me in London at the same time where that other person, Stefan Halper, was targeting me? So Horowitz never even mentioned her once. Bob Mueller never even mentioned her once. So I think Durham is finally going to expose who she really was working for and what that whole situation was really all about.
Absolutely. And for a lot of you that don't know who John Durham is, he is the investigator that is investigating the conspiracy of the Russian collusion investigation into President Trump and his campaign officials. Now, there's another interesting figure that a lot of people have not heard about, and his name is Joseph Mifsud. What can you tell us about Joseph?
So Joseph Mifsud is the mysterious professor who was meeting with me in London and in Rome when I was on the Trump campaign, where he was promising to introduce campaign officials and myself to various foreign governments. And that was natural business at the time. When you're a foreign policy advisor, your job is to help the candidate understand foreign policy and to introduce him to foreign leaders. So there was nothing odd about this individual when I first met him, until eventually one day he tells me, hey, did you know that the Russians have Hillary Clinton's emails? Now, this individual is at the center of not only the Mueller investigation, he was in the Horowitz report, and now Durham, which, as you mentioned, is part of the counter investigations into the spying, is looking into who this guy really was working for. If he was working with the CIA and Western governments, like I theorize and like I believe many in the Trump administration believe, that information in and itself completely upends the old narrative, and it will be tantamount to a conspiracy.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this question, George. You're more versed in this than all of us. Who do you think Mifsud works for?
Well, look, I've been very fortunate that my wife is Italian, and she used to work in politics in Europe, and she actually knew Joseph Mifsud, and we both actually worked at the same company that he worked for at separate times. So the intrigue with my story with my wife made some headlines back in the day because of that. And she has told me, and the evidence suggests, that he was working with Italy's government, and he was also working with the Obama administration to set me up, and he was also meeting with General Flynn in 2015. So this person is at the center of everything, not just in my story, but he was also targeting Flynn.
Absolutely. And here's the crazy part about the whole thing that the media is trying to hide from everybody. They talk about Russia and the conspiracy, or the so-called conspiracy with Russia, but there's multiple countries that were involved in trying to spy in the Trump campaign. Is, from what I'm hearing, there was Australia. They also had Ukraine involved. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on with Ukraine?
So I didn't have any interactions with Ukrainians. That's something that I know Rudy Giuliani has talked about a lot, and he's exposed. So I can't talk too much about Ukraine, but I could definitely talk about the UK and Australia. Now, I was one of the advisors that was meeting with these two countries frequently, to the extent that when Donald Trump was elected president, the British government sent me the letter of congratulations from their prime minister to send along to Trump to congratulate him. Little did I know that the British government was in on the spying against myself, Trump, and others. So why the British government was interfering? First of all, Christopher Steele was a British national. The guy Alexander Downer, this Australian diplomat, was also connected to UK intelligence. Stefan Halper, who was meeting with me with Osra Turk that you mentioned, was also connected to British intelligence. I believe that the reason the British government and other foreign governments were actively meddling against the campaign was for two simple reasons. One, Trump was against the globalist agenda, which these governments completely wanted. And two, they had vested interest in a Clinton presidency. So what better way to get in the good grace of the next president than to help muddy up and destroy her competitor? Unfortunately for them, they thought she would never lose. She lost. The cover-up is being exposed, and they're going to start going to prison on the other side.
Yep, and I think the American people are anxiously waiting for this to happen. Now, I've also heard that at one point somebody tried to offer you some money. They tried setting you up with some money overseas to try to get you to travel into the United States or abroad with that money. What can you tell us about that?
So, if you're not familiar with the Truman Show, it's a funny movie with Jim Carrey where everything around him is fake except himself. That's exactly the type of situation that I was finding myself in, probably from the moment I joined the Trump campaign through that fateful exchange of money abroad. Now, I know we're on limited time, so I detail that entire encounter in my book. But basically, what was happening here is because they had no real evidence, meaning the Comey FBI and Mueller, they had to fabricate evidence. So what they did was they went and framed General Flynn in an interview in which they knew he didn't lie. They forced him to plead. And with me, because they knew that I really didn't lie at all, and that I was talking about things that they already knew, they had to try and set me up with a $10,000 setup that failed because I just gave that money to my lawyer, and that money's clearly tracked. So I really just want people to read that whole encounter in my book because it's an incredible story, and it's center to what's happening right now.
Absolutely. And for those of you that don't know, I'm going to take a quick second, and we're going to post George's book. It is The Deep State Target. And if you don't know where to find it, you can find it on Amazon. George, tell us a little bit about your book. How successful has it been? And I'm going to let you get us closed up.
Sure. So I'm very proud that my book has been endorsed by the president, Sean Hannity, Rudy Giuliani, Maria Bartiromo, Janine Pirro, you name it. It's been endorsed. It's been supported. It's the only insider account of Spygate, who was involved, what their motivations were. I give the reader an inside account of what it was like to meet with some of the most infamous characters that you've heard about in the media over the last 3 years. The only difference between what my book highlights and what you've heard in the media is my book is the truth. My book explains that not only was the Trump campaign not colluding with any foreign governments, but the foreign governments were colluding with the Obama administration to sabotage the campaign. The will of the American people was heard loud and clear. Over 60 million people voted for Donald Trump. He was a success, not because of any foreign government, but because his policies affected our well-being, unlike Clinton's. That's why he won. That's what my book explains. And it's certainly a roadmap into exactly what these counter investigations are all about.
Absolutely, guys. And it's an outstanding book, guys. So if you haven't had a chance to read it, George Papadopolous, The Deep State Target, How I Got Caught in the Crosshairs of the Plot to Bring Down President Trump. George, thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us. I really wanted the people that are following the Lexit movement to hear your story. I want the American people to hear your story. To us, you're an American hero, and we appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning into Lexit. You guys have a good day.
Thank you. And you guys
Joe
keep up the
Biden
great work.
tried
You're
to cut Social
doing amazing
Security
things.
and Medicare for decades.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Now, Biden's promising your benefits to illegal immigrants. President Trump is protecting Social Security and Medicare, lowering costs, expanding access, keeping his word.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.